how can you think strategically a little bit more on the benefit programs?
Okay.
I think that's the biggest thing is how are you, do you feel like you're just doing the same rinse and repeat, or you feel like you're strategically helping a company to solve the challenges?
Steven Snyder, welcome to the show, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
Well, let's start here. For the people listening in who don't know who Steven Snyder is, take a second to introduce yourself.
All right. Well, I'm Steven Snyder, live here in DFW, but I've been here about 4 years. My wife and I moved here from Nashville. I've done the whole kind of move all across the country search. Dad was in the military, spent 25 years in the military there. Then he retired at Fort Knox in Kentucky. Played college baseball in Georgia at
We're going to talk about that.
All right. Baseball season's right here, so we'll have plenty to talk about, I'm sure. But now a father to 2 little girls. So that's a whole new world for me. I didn't grow up around girls, so it's going to be interesting. So we'll have to have another chat in like 10 years to figure out what that's going to look like.
When they're turning 10 going on 21.
Yeah.
So my first question, I knew your dad was a military father. And he finished his career at Fort Knox, you said? Is there gold there?
We have no idea. I think, so I've heard people talking about this, of course, they need to do an audit of it. That's going to be a whole different conversation.
I heard they haven't done an audit on Fort Knox in like 50 years.
Audit, I don't know, but I know they opened it up before we had moved there. We moved there in like 94, 95, and I think in the late 80s, they had opened it up to local press. So there is some video of that actually existing. Now, no, they didn't go through and count every single bar, anything like that. But I know that they've opened it up. But
where is Fort Knox in Kentucky?
It is right down I-65, or a little off of it, south of Louisville. So it's basically in the center of the state.
Okay. Would I have gone past it? Because I did go from Louisville to Lexington a couple years ago. Would I have gone right past Fort Knox?
No.
Okay.
No. Yeah, you would have gone through around Frankfurt, which is the capital.
Which is also where a lot of the bourbon is made, which we're going to talk about as well.
And the horse farms where all the Derby winners are from.
So when you were growing up, where would you have spent your formative years playing high school baseball?
Kentucky. We moved there whenever I was 9.
Okay.
So that's still home to me. So obviously I'm on brand with my throwback shirt with the Kentucky. Yeah. I fell asleep, unfortunately. About 10 minutes left. I woke up and I was like, oh, well, I'm actually probably glad that I didn't stay after that. I would have had a heart attack.
Did they have a big lead and give it up?
Yeah, they were up by 5 or 6, with like 25 seconds left. Lost it, and then won with that buzzer beater. So, for those that don't know, Kentucky basketball is a big deal.
If you live in Kentucky and you don't root for Kentucky, unless you're in the heart of Louisville, I guess you could say you're probably. Well said. I'll give them credit, though. They're back. Whoever that coach is deserves possible coach of the year for what he's done there.
All fans, I think, this is short for fanatic, of course.
Yep.
But I think just having that rivalry back is a good thing.
Yes.
It's more fun. Obviously, I don't ever want to see them win, but it does make it more fun when both teams are good.
And I think there's just something to be said in sports when certain blue bloods are good. It just makes the sport better.
Yeah.
Whether that's Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina, Louisville in basketball. When they're good, it just makes the whole sport good.
Yeah, especially I'd say those 4 in Kansas.
Even though Kansas is struggling this year.
Yeah, I think it's just because a lot of those they've been good all the way through. They haven't just had peaks and valleys. They've been good all the way through with maybe a valley here or there, but have found their way back up.
So you played college ball at Mercer in Georgia, right? Remind me, am I correct in saying did you go the JUCO route first?
Yeah.
So out of high school, where did you go play JUCO ball?
I went to Middle Georgia College.
Okay.
It's kind of in the center, obviously Middle Georgia, but for those familiar with Georgia, it's in between I-16 and I-75, which is about 45 minutes south of Macon, which is where Mercer is.
Okay. And so you spent 2 years there.
Yep.
And then went and played at Mercer.
Yep, and played at Mercer.
What position?
I was outfield, left and right field.
What was that like going from as an I love this journey from an athlete. Number one, was there a moment where you realized, I think I have what it takes to play college baseball?
Yeah, I guess there's one specific time, but I just being consistent over time. And I know one summer I batted like 500. So I think that had maybe a little something to do with it. But there was never anybody that I played against specifically that I got a hit off of or anything like that before senior year that I was like, oh, dang, I can definitely do this. But it might have been, being on the varsity team as a freshman when our team was always top 5 in the state. And we're talking in Kentucky, they still play single class outside.
Oh, wow.
So you're talking about we're a school of 700 kids, and we're still playing against the Louisville and the Lexington schools, and some of the Louisville schools have all boys, and we were still beating them down.
Wow.
So said a little something, and we had the Gatorade Player of the Year my senior year, or excuse me, my freshman year, and he was a senior.
Okay. What was your experience? Because Juco baseball has changed a little bit over the years, especially now with the whole portal and NIL money. I think with the portal, what it's done is I talked to plenty of fathers who have sons playing college ball. You have a lot more kids going the Juco route now versus going right to a 4-year college because of the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. A lot of the big name schools aren't recruiting as heavily anymore because they're getting their players from the transfer portal now. So a lot of kids are going the Juco route first to get seen by the bigger name program versus trying to do it out of high school. Here's what I remember about Juco ball, though. Just because it wasn't Division I, there was some damn good talent in Juco ball. So when you made the transition from Juco to Mercer, did you see much of a difference? Because I got to believe at Juco, you were playing some competitive baseball.
Yeah, our Juco team, I'll take my freshman year team against any team I've ever played with. I think out of the 21 guys, 13 of them played professionally at some point.
And there were an unlimited number of games, right? You guys, I don't think you had a game limit. Did you in Juco?
I don't know if we had a game limit or not. Okay. We had a fall schedule and a spring schedule. Okay. But it's interesting you say that, though, because they did have, whenever I was going, Juco was for a lot of the draft and follow people. Yep. Kids like me who might have maybe not had the offers they wanted out of high school, so I gave you an opportunity to keep playing. But then I think it transitioned to people who were going to 4-year schools because they had better facilities, better training, and then I guess it's maybe switched back with NIL and portal and all that stuff. Because when I was there, I pulled my hamstring my freshman year. Might have even torn it, but it was I'm trying to play. I got to keep going, but we didn't have a training staff.
Yeah.
So I'm just fighting through it. As best way you can in Cochran, Georgia. So I guess you just ate a bunch of fried chicken and drank sweet tea, which was the way to get through it. But there was no other way for me to rehab. There was no trainers, anything, because it was just you just had to keep fighting through, and obviously made it worse. So I'd said that too, that advocate of people going to a 4-year because you had a training staff.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think it maybe come back. But yeah, that team, I mean, I think that's when I realized that there were a lot of good players, and you had all kinds of personalities. Yep. You had guys that knew that they were only going to play professionally, that they went because they were trying to leverage their draft stock. Others, it was a way for them to get to the next level. And others, they just didn't qualify academically and couldn't play NCAA ball.
Yep.
And then others were just, they were just there trying to make the team and figure out what the next step for them was going to be.
So you make the jump to Mercer. What conference was that back then?
Back then, it was the Atlantic Sun Conference. So
is that still? Are they still in the ASUN?
No, they're Southern Conference now. Okay. So I guess if you're equating it back to the NCAA basketball tournament, back then you would have been a like a 14, 15 seed. 14, I guess, whenever they beat Duke.
Oh, so that's right. There. They beat Duke. I forgot about that.
Now, you could be like a 10, 11 seed in the SoCon because that's like Davidson, like Steph Curry.
Yeah. One thing, it's interesting. So that we could call that mid-major Division I, right? We were also mid-major up in Wisconsin.
Baseball was probably mid-major. Basketball was low major.
The thing I love about college baseball, though, and I do think it's different than other college sports, is number one, a kid can get drafted from any school, any division.
Yep.
Mid-major baseball in the South is good baseball, and I'm sure you experienced that. I'd be curious because you were in the South. You also probably played some top-level D1. Yep. Were there any guys you remember playing back then where you're like, because I experienced this going to pro ball. Mm-hmm. There were guys, like, for example, on the pitcher's mound, you couldn't really tell the difference between a guy throwing 88 and 93. And then you get the kid coming up throwing 98 and you're like, whoa. Yeah. Or the kid taking BP where you're like, you can't teach that. Were there any guys you played against at Mercer where you're like, wow?
Yeah, there were two. One was in summer ball before going into college was David Price. I played against David Price. Proud to say I went 1 for 3 against him. But he
ended up winning a Cy Young, I believe, with the Rays.
I believe so. Okay. Yeah, I'm not. I know he won a Cy Young. Not sure with who. Yeah. But he also hit a home run that probably still hasn't landed off of me. Well, he was actually a really good hitter, or at least he was on that pitch. Yeah. I don't know. But the other one was Buster Posey.
Oh, yeah. At Florida State?
Yeah, at Florida State. And he was playing shortstop when he was at Florida State. I don't think he converted to catcher until pro ball.
Yep.
But he was one of those guys that you saw him and he was a freshman. I mean, God, who is this kid? And he was really, really good, but I also don't know a ton about him. There are other guys that throughout the years you figured out that I played against them because in JUCO, there's no notoriety.
Yeah.
There's a guy, I think it was Lorenzo Kane. He played for the Royals and won the World Series. He played for the Brewers
too?
Okay. Because they mentioned him and said his name and said he was from Florida, somewhere in Florida, but went to Tallahassee Community College. I'm like, okay, he's about my age. Looked him up and I go, well, I'll be damn. I played against him too. So, but David Price and Buster Posey.
Yeah, I remember hearing the story about Posey. I was just reading a list not that long ago about the best college baseball players ever. And they were ranking, these were, I think, journalists that were kind of giving their opinions, or maybe former college coaches. Yeah, it was former college coaches. And one of them spoke up and said, hands down, Buster Posey. They said the fact that he probably would have been an All-American shortstop, move him to catcher, and he became an All-American catcher. And they said if he would have pitched, he would have been an All-American pitcher.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, guys like that are just freaks. I mean,
yes.
As you played pro ball, so you see it. There are just some guys that are just way better. They just had more talent than everybody.
The God-given things where you're like, you can't teach that.
You can't teach some of that stuff.
No, I totally agree.
This episode is brought to you by True Captive Insurance. What if you could take full control of your healthcare strategy without the financial burdens of traditional insurance? At True Captive Insurance, they make that possible. As the only captive in the nation that puts up the majority of collateral on your behalf, they provide financial flexibility from day one, making them an advocating partner for their customer success. True Captive's fully customizable plans and cost-saving strategies ensure you never have to choose between affordability and quality care. It's time to break free from the limitations of conventional insurance. Take the next step today. Visit truecaptive.com and discover a smarter way to manage healthcare. That is truecaptive.com.
So, did you get a chance, or did you have any opportunities to play above college?
No, I did not. I'm one of the 99% that went pro in something other than sports. So
how did you find yourself? Obviously, you're in the insurance industry now. How did you find yourself in the insurance industry? Because it typically finds us.
Yeah, like most, it was on accident. Graduating in 2008, that was the Great Recession. So I had 3 job opportunities at that point. It was to Northwestern Mutual, Aflac, and to AT&T Yellow Book.
Okay.
The thing probably doesn't even know what Yellow Book is. You know what Yellow Book is? No. So they're just proving my point.
I had a friend growing up who actually did very well as a Yellow Pages sales rep.
Yeah, I'm sure. But I used to tell that joke all the time whenever I would interview people. So I joined on with Aflac, but I'd do some career recruiting, and people would always ask, well, tell me your story. And that would be one of the things. And I would joke and say, how many of you even know what a Yellow Book is? And so clearly,
wasn't it the image of 2 fingers of a person walking too? Is that the logo that was on Yellow Pages?
I don't even think I ever knew what it was, but yeah, that's what
I think it was 2 fingers posting a person walking. Yeah.
But so clearly I picked a good profession by not getting into Yellow Book sales because people don't even know what it is anymore.
Isn't it amazing though when you think of the Yellow Pages? That was back when it made sense to name your business AAA Plumbing because you showed up first. That was marketing back then.
Oh yeah, that was. I didn't even think about that.
Okay, so you choose Aflac.
Uh-huh.
You go into the voluntary business space.
Yep.
And then how many years did you spend in VB before you made the transition over to the employee benefits world?
I spent 14 years on
wow. I didn't know it was that
side.
long. Okay.
Yeah. So I spent 12 years with Aflac, 2 years with an enrollment firm. And even with Aflac, that was pre-ACA also. So before even a lot of the competition on the VB side was getting into it. So a lot of like what you see now from these ancillary carriers that are doing VB or worksite products were not in the market for those plans then. It was a market solely dominated by Aflac.
Okay. What made you ultimately say, all right, it's time to make the jump? It's interesting because I've coached and I know a lot of people in this industry that have gone from being Aflac or Colonial and then have made the jump to becoming an employee benefit consultant. What made you finally say, all right, I want to take the leap?
I think it was probably one of those. It was a long time coming.
Okay.
I'd always worked with brokers.
Yep.
So you learn a lot of the knowledge, and of course, you're trying to stay top of mind to the brokers by outside of some of the products. So I'd always be, learning the industry of what was staying hot. So I think it was one of those. I'd been recruited by brokers because I'd always told everyone that if you're worth a damn and with working with a broker, if they don't try to hire you, then they probably really didn't very much like you, or they didn't really want to do business with you.
Yeah.
Because there were always someone that was trying to hire me.
Yeah.
But I think I might have been a little scared because obviously still early on with ACA to do it. And then finally just made the leap. Whenever we moved here to DFW, I worked in the VB a little bit, but I really wasn't feeling it. And I was like, all right, let me give this a shot. I'm talking to a lot of brokers. I feel like I'm bringing them more value about things that they're not aware of or just don't care about talking about anymore. So I was like, well, what if they're not talking about it? Why don't I talk about it?
Yeah. I'm curious, you don't have to admit this, but one thing I have often heard from people who've made the voluntarily leap from VB to EB is, I was watching these brokers make all this money and I'm like, you're not actually really doing that much. If you can do it, I can do it.
I mean, of course, there was a little bit of that, but I think that was the whole industry as a whole.
Yeah.
Because a buddy of mine had been selling Aflac when I started about 7 or 8 years. I was like, well, hell, if he can, so can I. But it was also just like, I feel like I've got this insurance thing down. Like with Aflac, as much as we were trying to solve a problem, at the end of the day, it was just a product, and there were 100 other products or carriers that were doing the exact same thing.
And I think this is a good conversation to have because there's probably a lot of VB reps out there or just people who represent a industry solution. They're not an employee benefits advisor that are looking to make that jump. Mm-hmm. What was the biggest shift for you going from primarily selling voluntary benefits to now you can offer it all?
Having a money conversation.
Okay.
When you're with Aflac, you're mostly dealing with an office manager, an HR professional. You never dealt with CEO or CFO. If you did, it was mostly at post enrollment or something like that, where they may be like, you're the Aflac guy.
Yep.
And that was it.
Okay.
Because these kinds of products were not costing a business anything to offer, but now you're shifting it to having, now we got a rate increase. Now you got to talk about money. You got to talk about finances. So you had to really increase your business acumen, but also too that the HR wasn't the sole decision maker. With Aflac, it might have been that maybe they had to go check in with the CEO or CFO. Mm-hmm. Hey, I think this is a good idea. We should do that. Do you want to do it? Okay, sure, go do it. But now there's multi-level decision making across the board. Like HR may love an idea, but it may be more financial, so the CFO needs to get themselves involved.
So how did you was there anything you had to do to get better when it came to having a financial conversation that allowed you to move over and have some success?
One, get over it. I had to get, because obviously when you're not used to having it, it's a little scary to have it, but also two, I had to have a learning experience of not winning a group that I probably should have won, that you might have checked 8 out of 9 boxes.
Yep.
But HR was not really the decision maker in this particular case. So I was like, okay, well, I need to figure out how to level up some of my business acumen and understanding what a P&L was.
That's what I actually wanted to go a little deeper because people might hear, well, what do you mean, Stephen, financial conversation? I understand numbers. I sell rates. I sell insurance. They come with plans and numbers. You're talking more about, this is having a business conversation with the profit and loss statement in front of a CFO. Is that where you felt like you had to make the biggest transition?
I didn't even know what a P&L was.
Yeah.
And there's probably a lot that don't, like learning the terminology. What's cash flow? What's a P&L? What's a balance sheet? Some of them may be similar, but I had no clue what any of that stuff was. And I never had to talk about it. And outside of probably my accounting 101 and 201 classes in college, I never talked about it.
That's a really good point. I never sold voluntary specifically, but you're right. You probably can win a lot of business in that world working with the HR. Mm-hmm. I hate to say it's more of a product tied to the payroll in a way.
It is.
But now all of a sudden you're selling medical and a bunch of other stuff that has to have the stamp of approval from a CFO or CEO.
Yep.
You're talking a much different language there.
Oh yeah, because the VB products, those can be employee pushed in reality. Like sometimes we would leverage a situation where we'd go prospect a business and 5 employees be like, hey, why can't we do this? So then we would call back and get the HR on the phone or whatever, like, hey, 5 employees just came up to us and said they actually want to enroll in this now. And so then that would be a way to be able to get it in, because like, oh, okay, I just got the payroll deducted. I mean, yeah, just as easy as payroll deducting, but sometimes those are entirely different conversations than what you might have with the C-suite.
So 1, elevate the financial conversation.
Yeah.
Number 2, what else did you have to do? What any other shifts you had to make going from the world of offering voluntary to offering benefit medical, which could be fully insured, self-funded, level funded, captives, you name it?
Yeah, thinking more strategically. and looking at a business from having to really understand their business and what they were trying to accomplish. We'd always talk, you're trying to attract and retain employees, and these products help that. But how do they tie back together from their overall objectives? From how the manufacturer worker who's in the back has a different need than maybe the electrical engineer in the front. Yeah. Work at the same business, but they have different needs. So you're trying to tie things together versus basically just product pushing.
That's a really good point. So if I'm listening, I'm at Aflac, I'm at Colonial right now, I'm thinking about making a leap. Number one, start studying a P&L.
Yeah.
Understand how the benefits impact the P&L, because you're going to have those conversations with the CFO. Number two, remember, this is not just a product you can push. You actually have to push a strategy that organization's going to buy into. That's important. And I would also say, to your point, you can't just sell this to the HR and think your job's done. Because now you're going to be working in a world where, let's be honest, in some cases, the HR does not have the final decision making.
No.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it too, you see a lot of people within who are doing a lot of creative things within the industry. They started within the VB industry. Because we learned it inside out. And we recognize first, this statistic is still true today that I used to always present. The number one reason for bankruptcy in America today is what?
Medical debt.
Yeah. So people always go, the co-payments. No, it was all the other things. It was mortgage, daycare, cell phone bill, all the everyday expenses was really how we did it. But it was just interesting to learn it that way. And people going, what? Well, why is that? Well, let's tie it back to this. So you see guys or gals that are doing a lot of these creative things out there. Many of them are tied back to Aflac at some point.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I'd love your opinion on this, because I think of the numerous people I know that were Aflac now on the employee benefits, and a lot of them have gone on to have a lot of success. What do you think it is? Is it the way you had to sell at Aflac? When you look back now and all the years you spent there, what influence has that type of selling had on what you're doing today?
I think you had to be much more of a storyteller.
Okay.
Because our biggest objection that we'd always get is we already have insurance, or we already have good insurance. Well, whatever you define that to be. And then I could think of numerous stories of people that worked for state governments or county governments, whatever.
Yeah.
That had, to be the more rich benefit, yet they were the ones who were filing bankruptcy because they had a cancer claim, and they ended up paying whatever carrier paid them $30,000 to help save their home, stuff like that. There's just you had to sell some of these examples of how it still worked on top of what health insurance was paying for.
Well, and on top of that, would you say when you were at Aflac, the other issue you run into is commoditization?
Yeah.
We already have VB.
Yeah.
And they're not even, sometimes, let's be honest, they could care less who the carrier is, right? It's Colonial, it's Transamerica, it is whatever. You probably had to find a way to stand out. I mean, you couldn't just come in and say, well, we're just another carrier providing voluntary benefits. There had to be, having to have a brand in a way probably was even more important, because if the carrier is less important, it's going to come down to the man or the woman I'm working with.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. What advice? So let me ask, I'm curious, what advice would you give that person who might be sitting on that fence right now, thinking about making a leap? You've been on the EB side for how long?
About 2 years, I guess.
Okay. So you're still fairly new.
Yeah, still fairly new.
What advice would you give that person who's sitting where you were 2 years ago?
Yeah. Really pay attention to what it is that you want long-term. Are you want to continue to be self-employed, which is what most of them were, or do you want to be able to use your brain a little bit more? Not to say that you didn't before, not to try to downgrade anybody. I'll be listening to that, but it's just how can you think strategically a little bit more on the benefit programs? Okay. I think that's the biggest thing is how are you, do you feel like you're just doing the same rinse and repeat, or you feel like you're strategically helping a company to solve the challenges?
Other than what we just talked about, what would you say are some of the biggest lessons you've learned then for the last 2 years you've been in the employee benefit consultant role?
I think the biggest one is that it doesn't take as much wins to actually have
more of a volume game at Aflac.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I remember from the last 7 years, I was leading teams, and if you were not as a team, if you were not producing say 30 to 50 new clients every single year, you were not going to win. it was going to be a bad year. Where here I could have 5 wins and have a massive year, or I could have 1 year and 1 win and blow it out. So it's remembering that, because sometimes it was very transactional, and now going, okay, I only need to have 4 to 5 wins in order to make my number for this year, or hit my goal for this year, but also still having to remember I still have to put in some of the activity in order to get there too.
Well, but you could also say, you need 30 to 50 to have a good year over on the VB side. Probably a shorter sales cycle in some cases.
Oh, yeah, typically.
Here, I only need 5, but as you know, it can be a longer sales cycle, especially as you're going upstream, right? And so I think that's really important for people to hear, because it may sound enticing to say, wait, I only need 5 wins to have a good year. Yeah, it's not, they don't come as quickly as they may have in the past.
Yeah, and that was a learning experience too, of I only need that. And so, so then you take your foot off the gas a little bit, and and maybe not put in as much effort as you should have, but then you look up later and you go, oh wait, my pipeline's kind of empty. Yeah. So,
well, let's have some fun with this conversation. I love to get into what drives people and motivates people outside of the work world. Let's start with your girl dad.
Yeah.
Ages?
Oldest will be 3 in April. And then the youngest is 5 months.
Oof. You just put out a post as of this recording, the day of, or was it yesterday? Was it today?
The post was today.
Was today. That, you got pooped on 3 times this week by your daughter. What's it been like being a new dad, but also a father of 2 daughters?
It's been fun. I mean, it's been interesting. You learn a lot. I've had great help with my wife, from both
and she's in the healthcare world.
She is. Yeah, okay. She is a pediatric nurse practitioner. Okay, so that's been helpful. Yeah, she's trained.
Yeah, you got one in the house,
so it helps. But at the same time, she's still a mom too, and all those things take place. So I had to learn a lot, especially on the fly, because her first year, our oldest first year of life, my wife was still working in the ICU.
Oh wow!
And they were short staffed. Yeah. So she was working long hours at the hospital. So who was not there for me to lean on? So I
grew up fast as a father.
I grew up fast and having to figure out how to do some of this stuff, like change diapers and things like that. So because I'd never changed one until I had my first.
Did it make you grow up fast too, though? Now that you have this new responsibility,
the second one for sure did.
Okay,
and the second one because I'm on more responsibility with where we live. It's easier for me to be able to do both drop off and pick up for daycare.
Got it.
So I have to figure out what I can say yes and no to.
Okay.
Whereas before, my wife had a fairly flexible schedule.
Yeah.
It was longer hours, but she might work, say, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Okay. And there might be a networking happy hour on Thursday that I could still attend. So I'm growing up and figuring out what do I say no to a lot of the times. Or one of the advices that I got early on for the first child was, doesn't matter how late you stay up, that kid's still getting up at 6. So especially during college football season when you had the Pac-12 after dark. Yeah. You go, well, I'll just have one more bourbon and then one more. And the next thing you know, it's 2:00 in the morning.
Yes.
And you're still watching Cal and Stanford. Again, I could not care less
why?
About.
We don't know, but because you want
football.
to.
That's why, because it's football.
And it's probably 52-48 the score.
Yeah. Correct, yeah. So just stuff like that just make you learn, you live and you learn. But so I'd say the second one probably helped me to grow up the fastest, because now it's, even though it was not hard going from 1 to 2, it was harder to go from 0 to 1 because it just shook your world.
Yep.
But going from 1 to 2, but also now being much more, having to be in charge of getting them up, feeding them, bringing them to school, picking them up, just because proximity just makes it a little easier.
Well, and I can't speak to this because Amy and I don't have any kids, but talking to friends who do, it's like your first one, everything is like, and by the third one, you're like, they're fine.
Yeah. My dad always joked with us about that we were out to eat, and I was back home in Kentucky a few months ago, or a couple years ago, I guess, but he saw somebody that we knew, and first child, they picked up the pacifier off the ground, they picked out a new one, he goes, first kid, huh? Because now I'm like, yep, now we pick it up, throw it off, rub it on, stick it right back in. They'll be fine.
You brought up bourbon.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk bourbon because you're going to educate me. Did that come from your Kentucky days? Is that where the liking for bourbon came from? Okay.
Yeah. It may or may not have been high school.
I think the drinking age back then in Kentucky was 15, wasn't it?
I just think you had to be able to stand up. Put your head above the counter.
What attracts you other than the taste? But is there something about bourbon that you find, because you're a pretty big connoisseur of it?
I wouldn't say connoisseur.
Okay.
People, because I do know more than the average person.
Yeah.
But I'm by no means connoisseur. Like I could not tell you like can you taste that vanilla or caramel in there? I can't do that.
Okay.
I just know what I like and what I don't like. But I think a lot of it may be nostalgia. Just growing up there, you was always around.
Yeah.
So I think that's more what it is. If I grew up in Texas, I'd probably like tequila more.
Yeah.
Or if I grew up in Northern California, maybe like wine more. I think it just happened to be.
So in that corridor between Louisville and Lexington, what highway is that?
I-64.
I-64. How many different bourbon?
Tons.
Is it almost too many to count?
Yeah, because you could even go further down.
Okay.
And it's like Maker's Mark is way down way south of that. And
okay.
Of course, Jim Beam and Willett and
Buffalo
Williams.
Trace around there.
Buffalo Trace would be off of 64. It's that's in Frankfurt, and then Woodford Reserve. I recommend for anybody to go to either Maker's Mark, because you can dip your own bottle, or Woodford Reserve. Not that the other ones aren't other good, but the Woodford Reserve is right there where all like the horse farms are.
Okay.
So like around the fog, you get a lot of this rolling fog. It's just a beautiful scenery.
So I got to ask, this is the ignorant bourbon taster in me. I go to these bars once in a while, and you know, are these bourbon, I don't want to call them bars, but you know what I'm under, what I'm saying. And you'll see these bourbons that are $120 for a glass. Is it worth $120?
It's insane, but I'll give the advice that Maker's Mark had given. Now, granted, the advice I'd gotten was before this mass bourbon hysteria and cult following over the last like 10 years. But they had said, go to a bar and buy that drink for $120. If you don't like it, you're out $120. But if you buy the bottle for $500 and you hate it, you're out $500. Because people will come and they see that bottle and hey, want a drink? And then the next time they see it again, they go, hey, why do you still have that bottle? It was here last time. I don't want it, because if you don't want it, I don't want to drink of it either. But now everything's such a mass hysteria and cult following that people will be like, I understand why you're not drinking that. But so, I mean, yes, but to kind of answer your question, yes, but no. It might be worth it to try it, but $120 is too rich for my blood.
Now, I didn't intend to ask you this, but I'm going to ask you regarding bourbon. I'm going to go all things bourbon here. What is a good food to pair with bourbon? So you're a Blanton's guy.
More bourbon? I don't know.
There's no meal of choice to pair with a bourbon?
I'll eat like pretzels or something with it. Most of the time,
I was thinking you were telling me some kind of steak.
I think steaks do go well with it, but that's what I mean. It's like I'm not. When I said I'm not a connoisseur, I don't know how to pair it with anything.
Okay.
But I would say a good steak would be something they would go with, but I don't know. Others might be able to give you something specific and say, well, you need to try it with this, and it has to be cooked this certain way.
Yeah.
And be able to pull out all the flavors. Do you ever use bourbon
in cooking? Can you use bourbon in cooking?
I think you can.
Okay.
I've not done it.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty certain you can.
Yeah. What, as we wrap here, Stephen, when you look back at your career, you've been in the industry now, 16 years?
Yeah.
Remind me, did you start pretty much out of college, right?
Within 6 months of graduating.
Looking back, what would you tell your younger self knowing what you know now?
It's a good question. You really are going to be able to help a lot of people through this process. Whether it be, whether you're on the VB side and you're helping them to protect against bankruptcy because of a claim, or you're going to be able to help a business owner to be able to actually put in a strategic vision for their company to help them with that process. So I think that there really is, while it may not be sexy on the outside, you really are providing a value and providing a service for companies and their employees and being able to do right by all of them.
I agree. I don't think enough producers on our side of the coin, whether it be voluntary or employee benefits, understand how important their job is.
No, I don't. I can't speak for everybody, but I don't think so, especially because we just hear all you hear about insurance most of the time is just so negative.
Negative, but they don't understand that the decisions or the advice you're giving can literally keep somebody from filing bankruptcy.
Yep.
And I think more people need to understand that. I'd love to know your thoughts too, because you started diving into the content game, a couple years ago?
Yeah.
How's that been for you? I know we talked offline. You had one employer who wasn't so
wasn't so pleased
keen
with it.
on you doing content, but you're still fairly new in your journey. What advice would you give? There's a lot of people out there that are watching what you are doing or others, and they're still sitting on the sidelines waiting for the perfect moment. And of course, you and I both know there's no such thing as a perfect moment. What advice would you give them? I mean, what's your experience so far?
First one would be just jump in.
Yeah.
They're all the videos are going to suck. It's funny because
yes, they are.
One of the worst videos I've ever done gets the most views still on YouTube about a limited benefit plan. Last time I checked, it had the most views of anything that I had on my YouTube channel. And I'm like, that one? Really? Where I'm clearly reading a script and reading face down on a script and mumbling through it. But I think don't be scared to lean into educating people. There's just a lot of things that are out there. It's hard to educate someone on a cold call. Good point. So yeah, all that stuff still matters. You still got to do all the traditional things, but I think content and being able to build familiarity. I think he was a little ahead of his time with that book, Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blunt, and that book was written in 2015.
Yep.
He was talking about getting on stages. He was talking about creating content and doing all those things. All it was prospecting.
Yep.
And it's just building your name so people can build familiarity, and that way they recognize your name. So that way if you do cold call their business and you're connected with them on LinkedIn, they may go, why do I know that name?
Yeah. I call it prospecting leverage.
Yeah.
You get one message in front of a lot of people at one time, you're leveraging your time, and that's important.
So I think that's the big thing is just don't be scared to educate somebody on it. You may teach somebody. But also think too, just don't listen to a lot of the talking heads that are out there and expecting a bunch of inbound leads. When I started doing all the content and leaning into LinkedIn, when I moved here, I was basically taught my whole career, cold call. You get results, but then I went the opposite. Like, man, I don't want to do this. I went straight to only LinkedIn and only network.
You got to do both.
And I can show you what the bank account looked like, for that first year that I was here. It wasn't the most ideal.
Yep.
So having to try to create a blend of all of it. I think there's still a lot of relationship that matters in this business, but being able to put your name in front of somebody as well constantly.
Well, and you're doing a good job with networking too, right?
Yeah. Because I think a lot of it is that you have to learn different things. And I think everyone thinks you show up to a networking event and you just sell the business owner. Well, I can promise you 0 business owners are at these networking events. Learn that one as well. So you have to figure out how to connect with people and who to ask for. Hey, these are the people I want to connect with. So I'd met somebody here through networking, and that's kind of what leaned me into him, was teaching people hey, if they're selling to the same industry as you are, who's a strategic partner, but they're not selling the same thing. Yeah. And that when you go out to an event and you meet Andy, you say, that's who I want to meet. Because obviously everyone's looking to meet a business owner. We're all looking for the same business owners. Yep. But it's how do you get in front of those ones? Then keeping that content may help out with the COIs learning more about what you do too. So this was a story that, it's not an inbound lead from a business owner. And I don't know whether she was per se watching my content for this, but an HR consultant that I'd met. We had a connection over bourbon. Yep. So
there you go.
She loves it. She was sending me things. I'm like, well, this is the one that I like. But calls me a month or so after we had met and says, hey, I've got a referral for you. Now we had to go win the business, but it turned out to be approximately $50,000 deal. Yep. That maybe or maybe not it was from the content. I don't know, but at least it was doing something.
We know it couldn't have hurt.
It couldn't have hurt. Yep. For sure. But I would say don't expect a bunch of inbound leads. Exactly. Is the biggest thing. It's still a full contact sport.
But what you just said, I think 2 things there that are very important. Number one, yes, you can't just think content's the answer. You got to mix it all. You got to build a prospecting strategy that fits your personality. The other thing is when you build that awareness, don't forget you're building awareness with centers of influence too, not just prospects. And you saw that with an HR consultant.
And somebody else has said that to me as well. I was like, man, I really like this stuff. I didn't know this about the insurance business. Yep. I was just like, okay, so I was like, oh, so you're the guy who's watching my video. But it's still just one of those, you never know when it may come. The networking, and then marketing in general is a long-term game.
100%.
But it's just figuring some of that stuff out.
Love that. Well, it's been an honor to have you on the show, Stephen.
Well,
it's been fun to watch your journey since you've moved here to DFW.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the easiest way to do that?
Probably LinkedIn would be the best way. I'm pretty active on there.
Stephen with a PH?
Stephen with a PH, and Snyder like the pretzels, just unfortunately not any relation. That actually works as on cold calls.
Especially with pretzels and bourbon.
Yes. Yeah, good call. But I actually use that on cold calls sometimes, and it breaks up that little pattern. So with all of it, I think it's just having fun, trying to have some fun with it. Some people are going to not laugh at that joke. I use it a lot, but some people are like, okay, I'll mark that down. No personality. So, but I think a lot of that goes back to what as you coach a lot with is building out the psychographic. It's not just the demographic, but people that are going to enjoy something fun like that. Me joking about that are probably more my cup of tea. Even though I'm weird that I use the word cup of tea because I'm not really a tea drinker, but it just that people are you're trying to attract like-minded people that have the same feeling towards you about something, and they're trying to accomplish the same goal.
Couldn't agree more, man. Well, thanks again. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
You're tuning in. I wanted you to hear Stephen's story. I think what you've done from moving from the VB to the EB side is going to be great advice for anybody who is thinking about making that jump. It's not just making the jump and continuing to sell products the way you are used to. You there's a lot of things you've got to make adjustments with, having a better financial conversation, being more strategic, building a better relationship, being a good storyteller. It all comes into play when you're selling everything. So thanks again, Stephen.
Well, thanks for having me on.
That's all we got for this episode of the Accelerate Your Insurance Sales Podcast. One of the most valuable things you can do to help us and other new potential listeners find our show is for you to rate the show and leave a review. So as a special bonus for you, if you leave us a review, take a screenshot of your review and send it to me as a DM to my LinkedIn profile. I will send you a free copy of our LinkedIn Diamond Playbook, our proven 4-step strategy to grow your business on LinkedIn. So go right now, leave us a review, screenshot it, and send me a DM on LinkedIn. Also, please share this podcast with anyone you think would enjoy it. That's it for now.